To the Education and Culture Committee. It's Thursday, September 11th, and we want to take time to remember this day. It's a very solemn day in our nation's history. There's actually right across the street, there's a memorial here in Rockville, and there's one that the city of Rockville is hosting right now. So I just want to take a brief moment of silence to recognize all those who were lost and all those who are still suffering with that. Thank you very much. Well, welcome back to the E&C Culture Committee, week 3 of school. I dropped my kids off, so it's still working. There's people are still there, and we're glad that the new school year is off to a great start. We're going to talk about 2 really important topics this morning: the central office reorganization. Get a little more insight into that. Obviously, that was a topic of conversation with the new superintendent and the budget earlier this year. And then an update on the school system's hiring and staffing, which obviously is also connected to budget. And we want to see where we are and where we're at and where we need to go and how that's working. Really excited to have Dr. Moran and Ms. McGuire and Ms. Connolly, excuse me, thank you. I think, is this your first time at the committee? All right, there we go. So we'll have you guys will introduce yourself. But, and of course, Mr. Prouty, I'll turn it to you first to see if you can tee us up for the conversation. And Councilmember Mink is on her way. She'll be here momentarily. So, Mr. Prouty.
Yep, thank you, Council Vice President Juando, and good morning, Councilmember Bornes. I'm Doug Prouty, Senior Legislative Analyst. As you mentioned, these topics were discussed last year during the budget process. The discussion of central office today will focus on how departments have been set up in order to provide more efficient and targeted support to schools based on data for that school in coordination and planning with the school's leadership team. Central to this effort are the cross-functional teams consisting of staff from a number of different areas with expertise, collaborating to address the specific needs of the students in each school. The update on hiring and staffing will provide detail on how MCPS strengthens outreach to prospective educators, particularly those who are serving students requiring special ed services and support with English language acquisition. We'll hear data on current vacancy rates and progress in the system's focus on increasing the diversity of certificated staff working with our students. Research shows that staff diversity is an important factor in student achievement. Finally, I want to say thanks to the member of the MCPS leadership team who are here with us today, as well as those who helped them prepare for today's work session. We appreciate their collaboration and their hard work on behalf of the students of MCPS and our community. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prouty. So is Ms. McGuire, are you going to start? All right, great.
Great, thank you. Mr. Prouty, will you bring up the presentation? Thank you. So thank you. We appreciate being able to come here today and talk about the reorganization and what we have been calling and thinking about as the restructuring of our central services at MCPS. This was a very important element of our budget work last year to look at the structure of the organization in a way that would provide the most direct oversight of critical areas and the most direct support to our primary objective of schools and supporting schools and students and families. So what you see here is the organizational structure that resulted at a very high level. This is the chief or executive staff level of the organization, and the rationale behind the divisions that were created here, again, really was to call out those areas that needed very specific attention. You see specialized support services, you see equity and organizational development, safety, operations, teaching and learning, technology, financial management, school leadership, to really be sure that each of those had a dedicated chief, a dedicated focus of leadership, and a dedicated attention within the district. If we could go to the next slide. The goal of the restructuring really was, again, to take what were sort of the internal operations of the school system and have them be as school-focused and school-present as possible. And the restructuring, I do want to take a moment and just acknowledge that this was a lot. It was a lot for the organization, and it was a lot for the individuals that do the work of the organization. Dr. Taylor talks a good bit about the storming, norming, performing phases of change, and we really want to acknowledge that the storm is real. It has been real for people. The restructuring changed the jobs of a lot of individuals to, again, take what had primarily been a central service focus and really bring that support that folks were providing from the central office, bring it to the schools. Dr. Moran will talk in a moment about the cross-functional teams where we brought, again, that expertise from the central service out to the schools directly. But that was our primary goal, and you see that here, resources from central office really being very present in the schools. What I am very happy to report is that as at the end result of all of this reorganization and all of this work, we were able to offer a placement and a position for every individual in the organization. I do want to again acknowledge that is also representative of some disruption for people on an individual level. And I want to, again, just be very, very clear about that we acknowledge and appreciate folks having to adjust their work location. But we also really appreciate the commitment of all of our employees to continue to dig in, to support the mission, and to carry out that critical work to schools. And I think what we are seeing with the beginning of this school year is a very positive result of that. And we are seeing that folks do have that commitment to the district and to their work. And that is absolutely what's coming through. Another important aspect of the central services restructuring was the reduced layers. And again, in the previous chart, we saw a number of areas of focus. The idea was that within each area, there are fewer layers of folks to work through, and that hopefully will result in reduced wait time and improved customer service. Part of the idea is for schools to know, rather than having to call a number and see who might be available to respond to them, schools will know this is my person, this is my support person, and that support person also then knows in central office who they can go to for support. We are continuing to work on our customer service mechanisms and our customer service platforms and approaches. That's going to be some evolving work, but what we are emphasizing absolutely is the culture and the ethic of customer service, of responsiveness, and we want to be sure that we can bring more nimble tools to our folks to really exercise and be able to be very responsive. And again, focused support on critical performance areas. These were our primary goals, and we feel very strongly that, or very confident, I should say, that that's reflected in our organization. It's reflected in a lot of the work that we're seeing here. But we also know that change is not a light bulb overnight, that we will continue to refine our implementation of this, we'll continue to improve it, and continue to strengthen our ability to execute in all of these areas. On the next slide, this really was the hub or the locus of the restructuring, was to organize our central services around cross-functional teams to support schools. And so again, when we think about curriculum specialists, literacy specialists, math specialists, those kinds of resources, specialists in special education areas, specialists in equity and in professional development, those were all teams within central office, and they still are teams within central office, just to be clear. However, they also are now organized in these cross-functional teams that have direct support for identified schools in identified clusters. The teams can then work together. They know what's going on in the school if an issue crosses over these areas, which virtually every issue does, and also, again, have a very close team relationship both with each other, with the school, and again, still carrying that back to their home office, if you will, the subject matter experts that are in the central office hub. And so we wanted to really, again, have those resources be very present in the schools, but have them stay connected to that direct central leadership that we maintain in central office. So that's the cross-functional and cross-functional teams. So I'm going to stop there and ask Dr. Moran to pick up with the discussion of how those teams are really carrying out their work.
So first off, good morning. It's great to see you. And I just want to take the opportunity to thank each of you for your support and partnership in what I believe has been a really successful first 3 weeks of school. So thank you to each of you. Excited to talk about this. It is something that has been very much needed in our school system. And part of it goes back to what Essie just shared around a lot of siloed work and a lot of difficulty from the school standpoint of who is their point of contact. So I believe one of the keys to cross-functional teams has been taking out essentially the middle person and having this direct one-to-one when I need support with ELD, when I need support with special education, when I need support, with literacy and math, that I have access to that person and they are a part of my school team. We've committed to those individuals being on school sites 80% of the week. On Fridays, we meet and go thoroughly through data and really determine also how we're going to differentiate support to schools. So each of these individuals, perform much of the same roles and responsibilities, but it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. As you can see on the slide here, members of the team are the professional learning specialists, which supports with restorative justice, equity, and Tier 1 instruction, which all of those three things should be very closely linked together. Special education instructional coordinator, our EML specialist, elementary literacy specialist, which has been a critical component to the fidelity of curriculum implementation, of having someone who's assigned to, between 13 and 18 schools as opposed to 36 schools, and can focus their time and energy in the classroom and preparing for instruction with teachers side by side. Mathematics specialist, which is serving K through 12. And then we also, on the well-being side, have pupil personnel workers assigned based off of data to each of those clusters based on their needs, and then a HR staffing coordinator, and then finally a cluster security coordinator for each of those. So again, cluster security coordinator we've already seen a significant impact with that because their caseload has also decreased, and then they're also in the same area and be able to provide much more proactive as opposed to reactive service to schools. If we could go to the next slide.
So just stopping here, just so we're clear. So
yes.
Every school has a team with these members.
Every school has a team with these
That's
members.
covered by, so obviously you said some are covering 13 to
Right. So
schools,
each director has a caseload of between 13 and 18 schools. Actually, I take that back. 8 to 18 schools. We have 3 focus clusters where we're providing more intensive support. Those clusters are the John F. Kennedy cluster, the Watkins Mill cluster, and the Gaithersburg cluster. So they have a team that is strictly devoted to those schools, and in those clusters is between 8 and 11 schools.
So of the 13 cross-functional teams, each one of those 13 has this team, and they split up between those numbers of schools that you just described.
Correct, and we're splitting them up, and this has also been a shift for us. For many years, we've provided equal services in Montgomery County from the central service perspective. And now what we're doing is providing equitable service to schools. So if I have a school that demonstrates significant needs based off of either, their student achievement data, their chronic absenteeism, more intensive support is being provided to that particular school, where there may be a school that's data indicates that they don't need that level of intensive support. So they might not have as much access to their cross-functional team. It may be more on a consult basis, or it might be more focused in a particular content area.
Got it. Thank you.
So, thank you, Doug. So similar to what Essie shared, the focus of this is really about decreasing the silos, having consistency in our communication, principals playing an active role with their director in determining the level of support. So often we've lived in a time where central services acts is telling you what you need, where really that should be a collaborative process where the school is telling you the service that they need, right? So, identifying those needs together, and that makes also a stronger partnership. And one of the things that I'm sure we'll talk more in the discussion part is having an action plan for each of our cross-functional teams that aligns with their school improvement plan. So not having these, separate arrows pointing in different directions, but being a supplemental piece to the school improvement plan so that it's documented. It's a communication tool, but it's also an accountability tool for us to monitor the performance of each member of the cross-functional team and then the overall performance of the leadership director. Talked a little bit already about equitable access, which I know we'll get into with the dialogue. But the other piece that I will say is accountability out of the gates this year has been extremely strong. The thing I love about the cross-functional team structure is the true shared accountability, where a school's goal is the goal of the central service team. So progress towards that goal is not based off of the school's performance alone. It's how valuable is the service in moving the student achievement, whether it's math, literacy, whether it's chronic absenteeism, suspension, disproportionality. We all own that data and are being evaluated on the performance of how that data moves and improves. So I'm excited by that. So I'll stop there, and then I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Conley.
We have this. That's the presentation that we have about the organizational part. We could either stop here for a discussion, or Ms. Connolly could go into the staffing.
Do you guys want to just go through the whole thing and then talk? Yeah, so why don't we keep going, and then it's all, they're very connected. So Ms. Connolly, welcome to the E&C committee.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I just want to start by introducing myself, Kaylin Connolly, Chief Talent Management Officer, and I am looking forward to sharing an update on back to school, hiring and staffing, and just want to thank each of you for your partnership and support on the budget and enabling us to invest in our educators in the area of special education, serving our most vulnerable student population. So I'm looking forward to just sharing an update on where we are and where we're going. Next slide. So in this year's budget, as you know, we added 688 new special education positions. So 188 teachers and 500 para-educators. And knowing that these are our hardest to staff roles, we focused on building a summer recruitment campaign, Be That Educator, really targeting our special education teachers and para-educators. We lifted up the voices of our strong special education educators currently serving in our schools, and the stories of why they chose MCPS and what keeps them here. So the campaign combined digital marketing along with some in-person hiring events in July. So this is a screen grab from one video. Wanda Johnson, a 24-year special education teacher at Blair High, talked about the difference she makes in the lives of our students each day and how the MCPS community and the supports and opportunity for impact are really what keep her here. And we'll continue to tell stories like Wanda's as the year moves forward and we gear up for our next recruitment season. So I'm pleased to share that we started the year off strong with nearly 98% of all teacher positions filled. And just to put this in perspective, that's on par or even stronger than other large Maryland school systems. So specifically, we have filled, as of August 26th, the first day of school, 95% of our special education teacher positions, 93% of our special education para-educator positions, and 98% of our EML teacher positions. So we continue to hire aggressively, and we are confident that we will continue to fill these critical roles.
So this is like as close to as of today as you can get.
So this is as of the first day of school.
So
So
it's probably changed slightly
it has, yes,
in the right direction.
in the right direction,
Okay.
yes. And we expect these numbers to continue to climb. And to put that data into further perspective, we're maintaining very strong fill rates while also increasing volume of new hires. So we hired 846 candidates for teacher level roles this year compared to 696 candidates last year, which is a 22% increase. So this is really a good news story. We are managing to scale up while also maintaining very strong fill rates, particularly in the area of special education. And in more good news, our new teacher cohort is more diverse than our current teacher workforce. And we know the importance of strengthening the diversity of our teacher pipeline and its direct impact on student achievement. So 21% of our new teacher hires identify as Black or African American compared to 13% of our teacher workforce district-wide. 16% of our new hires identify as Hispanic compared to 10% of our teacher workforce overall. So we want to continue to build on this progress by strengthening our recruitment partnerships and deepening our engagement with HBCUs, HSIs, and our local institutions. So during the budget process, there was
One thing just to add on this, and I'm increasingly interested in, is male versus female as well. So I know you have the number, but if we could just get that as a follow-up, and obviously something to be cognizant of in addition to the racial ethnicity question.
absolutely, we can certainly provide that. So next slide. So during the budget process, there was concern we wouldn't be able to fill new special education positions, and that concern was very real given the national shortage. But today we can say that we're filling at higher rates than we expected. 95% of special education teachers and 93% of special education paraeducators on the first day of school. And as you noted, we're continuing to see that number climb. Filling the vast majority of these positions was a huge success, and we want to thank you again for your support and your partnership on the budget. While we have 95% of our special education roles showing the strength of our recruitment strategy, we also want to continue to build upon what we're currently doing and expand our recruitment efforts this coming school year. And to support our special education paraeducators, we implemented differential pay. And we know pay alone isn't everything, but it helps us recruit and retain great talent in our schools. So combined with just the targeted recruitment, these investments have really meant MCPS is ahead of where we expected to be, better positioned than most districts, and committed to closing our remaining gaps. Yeah. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. And you mentioned telling us a little more about yourself. Do you mind just doing that? Where'd you come from? Where have you been?
Absolutely. So I am coming most recently from the School District of Philadelphia, where I served as Chief Talent Officer. Prior to that, led talent strategy in Houston ISD, and I started my career as a teacher. So this work is near and dear to my heart, and specifically the area of special education. I spent close to 6 years at the Council of Chief State School Officers supporting state education agencies in strengthening the ways that they prepare and support teachers and leaders to strengthen outcomes for students with disabilities.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that, and we're glad you're here. And so this was very helpful. I think I'll start, and then I'll turn to colleagues who can just have a discussion. That's the end of the presentation part. Yeah, thank you. So just going back to the, I'll just bounce around here. So On the, you said the greatest need that you need to fill is about 69 of the special educator positions. So that would mean, I don't want to do the math, but is that both para and, does that 69 number include both in-classroom teachers and para? What's the numbers? What's the 69 number comprised of?
So that number was 69 as of the first day of school for special education teachers. And since then, we have processed 42 new special education paraeducators and 10 new special education teachers. So that number is now 59.
Right. Okay. And so it's a mix of both in that category. That are left. You know what I'm saying? What's remaining?
59 for special education teachers.
And are they all paras? Are they all what's the mix within that bucket?
That's special education teachers.
The teachers themselves. Okay. So that's pretty good progress in that short period of time. So you mentioned the differential pay. Could you just talk a little more about that? And I think some people's ears perk up when they hear that. Like, what are we doing, and how has that been an effective tool?
Well, we earlier this year reclassified paraeducator positions with 3 levels: paraeducator 1, paraeducator 2, and paraeducator 3, with the 3rd level supporting students with the most intensive needs. And we just completed that process of ensuring that all paraeducators are in the correct assignment and level. And this has been a powerful signal of our investment and priority in strengthening the pipeline of our special education paraeducator and teacher workforce, because we see it as a pipeline. We have a career ladder in partnership with labor, with SEIU, and we want to continue to grow that pipeline in the coming year. And this is one just powerful strategy enabling us to attract and retain great talent and build the pipeline from special education paraeducator to teacher.
Appreciate that. I think it's important to highlight that. I think that's something that's been asked for a long time and is needed, because the roles vary so greatly in what folks are doing. Kind of stepping back, and either one of you can respond to this one. Ms. McGuire, you mentioned the shake-up and how there's been some pain in all of this, and obviously we heard that from folks throughout the budget process. And so just want to, anytime you restructure, there's going to be people looking for a seat and used to where they were and maybe not thinking that services can be delivered the same way. So I think, some of the questions around that I want to ask a little bit about that. The staffing specialist issue was an issue throughout the process, those cuts, and how that has either had, what impact that has had in your mind on vacancies or even delays in hiring. That's something that we've heard, and I just would love you to respond to that.
Thank you. So we did previously, our staffing work had been separated out largely by union and by association. And so the change there was to, we have a net increase in the number of staffing coordinators and staffing assistants who do that work in total. But the staffing coordinators are now responsible for both MCEA and SEIU hiring. And so that's been certainly a learning experience and a learning process. At the same time, we're also working through learnings around our enterprise resource management system, the hub, which is our new personnel and finance processing system. So there's been a lot of learning, and that has absolutely been challenging. We do, however, feel confident that this approach, again, it's beneficial in the context of the cross-functional teams. It's beneficial in terms of, again, having individuals who can understand and help schools map and put together the full continuum of services and positions at schools. It again reduces the number of people that schools need to interact with, and just provides more continuity in that staffing structure. Staffing specialists have been placed and reassigned and are doing very valuable work across multiple areas of our district, and we absolutely value their contributions and want them to be successful in their new positions.
I appreciate that and for the reasoning. So and obviously my office and other people's offices have heard about delays in pay. That happens always sometimes at the beginning of the year, but for this year, this is the most I've heard about it in my time on the council, and just as far as anecdotally, what's the plan to make sure people are getting paid the right amount if there's back pay that's needed? Good, I got Ms. Alfonso Winter to come up. And compensation for any late fees that folks have incurred. How could you just talk about that? Sure. That's something we've been hearing about a lot.
Absolutely. I'll start and give some overview, and Ms. Alfonso Windsor certainly has been deeper into this work. So that's a primary concern for us, and it has been one of the primary concerns of the summer. So the summer pay issues really have been resolved. We are continuing to work through any residual issues that may be coming up as we work that through. We have, and again, I'll let Yvonne speak more specifically about this, but what I can say in terms of your question of what are we doing, we are taking a cross-functional approach in the central office to this as well. This is really a combination of efforts. It starts with our human resources team and the folks who, again, are responsible for clarifying those assignments, having them updated in the system, and then working very closely with our payroll team who are, ensuring that the hours and rates and the different levels are accurate. Bringing those two teams together and doing very granular troubleshooting is what we are doing now. And so what we are seeing is much greater success in our current state of the fall and the school year around that work. I will say as an overarching statement, and it doesn't. The summer assignments are challenging because often you have folks who have one job for 10 months of the year, and then all of a sudden they may have one or two different assignments over the summer. So on the one hand, we do frequently experience some, discombobulation with summer assignments. Certainly nothing to this extent, and these are system issues that are being resolved and have been resolved. And we feel very confident that we have learned a great deal about our processes so that this will not repeat next summer. In terms of our work with addressing individuals who are impacted, we are in the process of determining some recompense funds that will go to individuals who were negatively impacted by a lack of pay or inaccurate pay over the summer.
And that's been communicated to those individuals that have.
Yes,
okay.
It has.
Ms. Alfonso Winter, anything to add?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we did, like Ms. McGuire mentioned, we experienced more difficulties this summer. The summer assignments for a school system, it's interesting. It's different, right? Because we are offering all these programs and we have to hire people for those programs. So we usually during the summer, we hire our current employees, about 5,000 of them, to provide other services or services-specific programs over the summer. So as everyone knows, we have a new, human resources and payroll system, and the volume of those transactions did create some issues over the summer, and we didn't really learn the impact of it until almost the end of July, because that's when the first, payroll comes in. So we work with our implementer, we work with our payroll system. A lot of lessons learned, how we can more quickly turn around off-cycle payrolls for the employees that is completely, immediately deposited into their accounts as the troubleshooting happens. Unfortunately, some of them are very detailed troubleshooting that has to take place. So it takes time for a person to go in and figure out exactly what happened to that person and make the corrections. But there were a lot of lessons learned. We are making a lot of progress. We have resolved the summer pay situation. Like Ms. McGuire mentioned, we are working on making sure that those employees are compensated if they experience any interruption in their pay. And we're going to look through the summer assignments for next year. We're going to start at work group probably in January, just to make sure, because it's a cross team, right? It's the programs that are hiring this employees plus, the human resources and the payroll system, to make sure that we have a more automated system so that people are in the correct assignment at the beginning of the summer, and then they can get the correct pay. In terms of the beginning of the school year, we are working in collaboration with the Human Resources Department to make sure that people are in the correct assignments. So one of the things that we instituted for this past pay period, we set up office hours where both the payroll team and the Human Resources team opened, had about 6 hours on Friday and 4 hours on Monday, where the timekeepers to the schools and sometimes the principals could come in, have a virtual session with an employee to determine what were their issues within their school, meaning employees were not in the correct assignments, so that they could be corrected on the spot, and that person's payment would be correct for that pay period. And we will continue to do this for the next 2 or 3 pay periods for the beginning of the school year as people are moving. There's still some movement around. People are being hired to make sure that we don't experience this situation again.
I appreciate that. Obviously, it's difficult for people that are transitioning, and as you know, many folk, they do the summer work because many are 10-month employees and need that to supplement their income, and they can't miss those checks. So what's this, and I appreciate you acknowledging that this was out of bounds of normal years because of the transition into the systems. So what's the scale and scope of where we are now? Have most people been, I hear you saying that I think most people have been paid at this point, and then we're just looking for kind of maybe some recompense, or just where are we at with the kind of the numbers broadly?
We feel very comfortable that over 99%, maybe even 99.9% of the employees that suffer any pay issues over the summer have been corrected. We might have some strugglers, that we still, because they might be more difficult to resolve. Sure. We have fixed some issues, but other in that particular person might still be pending. So we're working through that, but it's very, very minimal at this point. Okay. In terms of summer. Again, the issues right now are not the issues, but what we're working through is making sure that people are in the correct assignment.
Right, because there's been a lot of movement. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
But for the summer, we are feeling very comfortable that we have addressed it, and we're putting things in place to make sure that employees can access, and get to somebody as soon as possible. Again, this was a big shift for us because we went from paper timesheets and one person entering the time for all the employees, and now we have 40,000 employees that are responsible for submitting their own time. And again, that takes additional training. So we're working on that as well, to start providing additional training and more consecutive training as new people come into the system, so that we don't experience this again. Yeah. So it's a multi-phase approach to make sure we cover everything.
I appreciate that. I have one more question, then I'll turn to colleagues, just related to, there was a statement made, I thought I wrote it down, but I'll paraphrase Ms. McGuire, that everyone who was shifted as a result of the reorganization and restructuring has been offered a position.
That's correct.
What are the numbers on, have some people decided not to come back? Have they all accepted? What are does that mean offered and accepted, or just offered?
So I don't have specific, certainly individuals did make individual choices, and we know that some folks perhaps chose to retire, some folks may have chosen to go somewhere else. Those are individual choices. Sure. that individuals are absolutely
they always make
going
year.
to make.
Yeah.
And so I don't have specific numbers.
Right.
Also, it's hard to know necessarily why folks make
Sure.
those choices.
Sure.
What we do know is that, again, we were able to offer and place, if someone accepted it,
Right.
Everyone that was displaced. And again, individuals will make choices about what they need to do.
Okay. I would be curious if there are any trends in I know you can't know why someone left, but of the people that were offered, I would be curious to know how many accepted.
By and large, folks did.
Okay.
That I realize is not a numerical answer, but
Yeah.
People.
The vast majority.
The vast
over
majority
90%.
of folks are working in their new placements, and again, we are very grateful and appreciative of their efforts.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll turn to Councilmember Mink.
Good morning. First, I want to just acknowledge the importance of the funding that we moved in this last budget cycle, which we're obviously we're talking about it, but I just want to make sure that we say that very, very clearly, because it was, it was a difficult decision. We're in a difficult budget period, but the needs are great. The needs are far behind and escalating, and there was, there's a need to work to fill that gap and to take steps. And I'm proud that we were able to work together with MCPS as a council, with the executive branch, to make that happen. And we're seeing some of those results in what we're talking about here today. Obviously, there's going to be continued need for growth and improvements and all of those things, but making sure that we moved that funding was really important. And there's going to be another difficult budget cycle coming up and more difficult conversations to be had. And so I just want to make sure that we frame that first as well. So thank you all for that work, and I thank my teammates on the council as well. There are, I'm sure many of us have heard reports about some of the conditions in the CESC building there. Obviously, making sure that our staff are healthy, are able to work in a positive environment, critically important, necessary. So what's going on with that? We've heard about mold and rodents, et cetera. Obviously, again, funding issues, right? It's very, very difficult. We have lots of buildings that need improvements. This is one of them. But what is that looking like now? Are there conversations to either have imminent fixes or to implement telework? If you could just update us on that.
Certainly. So, yes, absolutely, we are taking that situation very, very seriously. And, Carver is a challenging building. It's historic. It's important. It has a soft spot in many of our hearts, but it has not received funding or infrastructure capital attention in a very long time. And that is something that we want to take seriously for the long term as well. And I'll just highlight that we've got a full CIP coming up, and we do want to be attentive to our infrastructure needs. In the more short term, immediately, we are absolutely working with offices there that are impacted. We've done a couple of things. One is that we have actually opened the Grosvenor Holding School for an alternate work location for offices that are impacted and for folks who need to leave their space before we can get to remediation. So we have an alternate work location set up now, and again, folks are able to take use of that, and we've had that. I'm not going to remember the date off the top of my head, but it was very, very shortly around the opening of school that we were able to get that space ready for folks. What we also have done is worked with all of the offices to really identify clearly which offices are impacted, because I do want to be clear, it's not all of Carver, right? Carver's a challenging building, but large portions of it are just fine. And so I want to be clear, too, that we're not evacuating Carver. This is not that level of an emergency. Offices that, however, that are having that level of issue have reported. We have assessed, we are reviewing, and we are working to remediate. So the remediation is a time when offices may need to relocate and go again to Grosvenor, or folks can work in a school. A great number of the people who are at Carver are on the cross-functional teams and spend time in schools as a matter of course. So again, we're working with all of the offices around what accommodations from an alternate work location that they need during that time. The intense remediation, it would be helpful for folks not to be there, just because we can really, take on the whole space at once. And then again, those are pieces that we're working on. We also have, we're working again with some outside assessment as well, just to be sure that we're covering all the bases that we need to, so that we can re-inhabit that building successfully.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'm glad that there's both short-term and long-term plans there, noting that obviously we are still hearing from folks, so encouraging those conversations to continue and make sure that they're reaching everybody who needs those opportunities to have alternate accommodations. As you all worked on the reorg, a couple of the conversations that we had to do with the equity unit, as well as with the restorative justice team and changes there. So if you could speak to both of those, and as a refresher for the millions watching at home, as our chair likes to say, on the equity unit, some of the conversations had to do with a desire to make sure that those folks really had teeth, that when they go into the building and they do something like an equity audit, for instance, that there is a real vehicle there to make sure that there is then follow-up support provided to administration on the implementation side, and some kind of accountability, and so, a mechanism to help make sure that those suggestions are implemented. And so I understand that there were plans to help make that happen, so I wanted to follow up to understand that better. And then on the restorative justice side, obviously there were lots of concerns with that, and we want to make sure that that work is being accelerated, not slowed. And so how's the reorg on the ground now helping to support that work, especially with the new code of conduct, which we will be talking about relatively soon, and the need to make sure that everybody on the ground is able to put RJ first, but do that with fidelity. We know how important that is. And so concerns about, making sure that the way that we're structured now, that everybody in schools who needs it is going to have the training, the advice, the oversight that they might need and want to be able to do that would be helpful to understand.
Yeah, so first off, really excited about our new Chief of Equity and Organizational Development, Nia Hamlet, who has immediately come in and elevated the importance of those equity instructional specialists being a member of cross-functional teams. So we've been working together to ensure that they are assigned. There's not 13 of them, but there, are places that they should consistently be focused on, clusters, particular schools. So elevating them so that there's consistency in terms of their role and they have a presence on those teams and are being deployed to schools appropriately. In conjunction with that, the professional learning specialist has been something that we were able to maintain over 50%. So out of the 13, I believe we've maintained either 7 or 8 former restorative justice specialists, which has been extremely advantageous. At the same time, we've added, the remainder that may not have the background and training that the 8 have. So one of the focuses this summer has been to ensure that they get the professional learning, and it's been nice. I mean, you have the experts in the room to provide those new people, that some of them had some school-based experience with restorative approaches, but that professional learning took place over the summer to get them on board and up to speed so that they can provide the level of support that's needed at schools. I think one of the things that has been extremely advantageous just in the first 3 weeks with this model has been it's not just restorative approaches. It's been around curriculum. It's been around math. It's been this idea of a principal calling when things get bad, right? And someone goes out to the school and provides this kind of firefighter type support as opposed to fire prevention support. So now you have 13 people who specialize in restorative approaches that are in schools and providing differentiated support based off of things that occur in the school. But the idea of this is to also empower teachers, right? Because people from central services, yes, they're present as much as they possibly can be, but there's a time where they step away and they're not in the building. And so we have to build the capacity of administrators, of teachers, of paraeducators, to have the skill sets to lead a restorative approaches environment within their school. Of course, that starts with the principal. We have principals that excel at this, and we have principals that are in their first year and need significant support around creating an environment. We also have schools where we have incidents of race, hate bias that are at a higher level than other schools. So the coordination between Ms. Hamlet, her team, and myself and the directors has been getting into a weekly routine of looking at that data in an ongoing manner and not being in a reactive state. So just in cabinet yesterday, we looked at that data over the first 2 weeks of school to get an idea of how people were starting off. Just to interject one other thing, I think that has been extremely important is that the hate bias protocol, with the support of the professional learning specialist and equity, was delivered to all principals during the Summer Leadership Academy, which took place in August. It then transferred over to all staff receiving the exact same training on that protocol. And then it was discussed with students via town halls across, all of our secondary schools, and then in a more appropriate way at our elementary schools. So what we've built, I think, is this common understanding of not only the resources that are provided by professional learning specialists, but what are my roles and responsibilities as any member of an educational community in addressing hate bias, how I utilize those strategies within restorative approaches, because we hadn't standard set. And what we saw last year, and there were multiple examples of it, of staff not being appropriately trained on hate bias protocol, and there were missteps and students were harmed as a result. So we've been extremely tight on that, which was needed, and we'll continue to be tight on that. And I believe that the partnership that we've established will result in a lot of gains in that area and creating more of not these pockets of excellence, but a culture of excellence around restorative approaches.
Thank you. Well, that's certainly what we want. So that's good to hear. And obviously, we'll be going more in depth into all of that as well. But it's, one of the complaints certainly has been that trainings weren't required. And so the folks who are going to not find it important enough to attend are also the ones who most need to attend. So it's glad to hear that there's work being done to remedy that, and look forward to learning more about that as well. Tangentially, also noting, well, in regards to, the need sometimes to, we're trying to avoid the fire hose and going on the prevention side as well. But sometimes there are incidents, and then, support is needed at that school to step in, especially if one community is targeted, there's fear, there's trauma, et cetera. We had an incident yesterday in front of one of our schools, in which ICE enacted a detention in full view of students who were arriving at school. Now, our buildings are secure. We have protocols and NCPS. That said, the attacks on our community, they are happening. They were happening over the summer. They are happening now. Students are being impacted. And, and just yesterday morning, we had students, parents, caretakers, staff who witnessed something that many are finding to be quite traumatic. And so, I think this is a really important scenario for us to figure out, how we're going to react. And, this just happened yesterday, and I know that we all want you all to have time and space to figure out a really thoughtful response, obviously, as quickly as possible. But I'm not going to ask you to go into great detail about that. I'm just going to note for a very soon follow-up conversation, and obviously feel free to speak to it in whatever way you want, but I also want to give you the space to continue to think pieces of it through. What are we moving immediately after when an event like that happens, when we have children who have witnessed an event like that, staff who have witnessed an event like that? What does the follow-up action look like? What should the messaging to the community look like? So we establish some similarities in response across the entire school system here. Obviously, this is not something that any of us want to have, and we want to make sure that community members know that we are all working very, very hard to make sure that our schools are safe places to come and to learn. But it is undeniable that events like what happened yesterday cause a traumatic ripple effect, could have a chilling effect if we do not, react in a way that acknowledges and then enhances the feeling of safety and security as much as is possible, and helps, both children and adults to work through what just happened.
So, and just to respond, and I agree with there needs to be, further discussion about this. I think the first thing that I would say is, and I can say this, with all my heart, our principals, our educators, our paraeducators carry the imprentis locus with them into the building every single day. They care deeply for our kids and are willing to do anything to ensure that they are safe. So I just want to start with that, because I know
absolutely agree with that. Yep.
As upsetting as it is for children, it's also very upsetting for adults in a community to be starting their school day, holding their cup of coffee, greeting students, and have to be exposed to that happening within their school community. So but to just respond to the reaction, right? So we have developed a response when something like this occurs in partnership with Dr. Cage's office, where we immediately deploy our EML therapeutic counselors, social workers to the school to provide support. I think one of the challenging things is determining if an incident is affiliated, if there's an individual affiliated with the school versus non-affiliated with the school, because that requires an entirely different approach, right? But that is something that I think there needs to be, not only collaboration with us internally, but collaboration with other departments outside of the school system for how, as a community, we're going to support our families, inside of the school and outside of the school, because and communication has been key with this, right? The sharing of information and the sharing of accurate information so that we have knowledge of what happens, in an apartment complex that's adjacent to a school is critical. But look forward to, unfortunately, having to work very hard together, with our partners, of course, in the school system, but also outside with, MCPD, DHHS. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Albanos.
Thank you. I appreciate all those questions from my colleagues. So on the reorganization, which I appreciate and respect, and I've been through a few of those myself, I know how challenging they can be on every way imaginable. And it certainly sounds like, and just based on my own private conversations with colleagues within the central office and the school system as a whole, that it was handled as well as it could have been. So appreciate all the sensitivities you gave to staff who were impacted by this, because it does say something about the central office, and you're caring about everyone. So I appreciate that. So how are you going to track success of this new model? What does that look like? Does that look like climate assessment surveys among administrators? How will you know that it's working?
So I think the number one measure, and I look forward, to the opportunity to talk more about this, is increasing and accelerating student achievement in literacy and math, and that's the number one, right? So we have performance that is a level of urgency that there's never been before, not only in Montgomery County but nationally, and so the effectiveness of these teams will be determined upon how we see students progress. I just had a conversation with our partners in MCCPTA last night with Mrs. McGuire, and Mr. Albert has the goal of moving the needle 10% is not enough. Our goals need to be starting to look at moving at quarters of students to proficiency in literacy and math. So I think that's the first measuring point. The other measuring point that I think is really important, and I know you'd agree with this, Ms. Mink, as a former teacher, is that the perceptual data that teachers share with us about the service that they're being provided, right? So when you're going in from central services, whether you're a principal or you're a teacher or you're a paraeducator, there's a feeling of this is a kind of evaluation, and we need to moved from this evaluation supervision model to a support and service model that's based on coaching, and we're in this together. So collecting perceptual data from all of the individuals at schools around the support they're receiving, sharing that with them, talking about what we're going to do to improve, celebrating successes. And then finally, I think it's around the well-being part. We just spoke about an incident that took place at Eastern. What's our, footprint in the community with parents, whether it's PPWs, social workers, and then finally the work also with our staffing coordinators. To speak about Ms. Connolly's work, we have often staffed schools in the dark or from far away. And when people are present in schools and not only following up with someone that they helped get hired, right, the relationship piece is essential. So, and same with our cluster security coordinators, right? So, but I think another part of the focus is that we've been very operational heavy over the past 5 years. We need to put all of our chips in the instructional focus. And that's part of why we've started this year with really establishing strong structures and processes. So that's a safeguard to really being able to focus our time and energy on student learning.
That's a great answer. I appreciate all of that. The other thing I've heard from administrators and principals over the years, and have seen and witnessed as well, is sometimes feeling a lack of support from the central office, particularly when there's a very sensitive policy issue that's being debated, and sometimes they feel on their own to deal with really complex issues. And it's often frustrating for them because they're left to interpret what's happening from the central office to parents and staff. Will the director of school leadership, the coordinator at each of those 13 locations, have the opportunity to support the principals and be given access and speak to and empowered when appropriate to parents and to other staff as a representative of the central office?
So absolutely, and that type of work has already begun. I think part of it also is about creating a relationship that's grounded in trust, where someone is comfortable enough to say to someone who's in their supervisory role, I need some help with this. And I think we've kind of gone through this culture where we've all acknowledged that there are times where people have not felt safe to acknowledge a need for support. And so that happens with strong relationships, creating psychological safety. But I think presence in schools makes a big difference, right? Like, as opposed to talking to people about what they're doing, actually doing work with people. So a lot of directors, directors and all those members of cross-functional teams are actually like in classrooms, in hallways. We're supporting with lunch and recess. We're supporting with arrival, dismissal. You gain credibility to through doing your actions, not your words. I think there's been a lot of words for many years, and people ask people for help when they see them actually helping them. So that's how we've started off the school year, and I'm hopeful that our principals will begin to feel a level of comfort and trust just to say, hey, I need some help with this.
I think just to add to that too, sort of your question about central communications, we also are working to provide more information centrally about those central decisions that are made. And so through a whole variety of means, some of it is just sharing blurbs with principals that they can use to communicate to their community, sharing videos that, again, can be recirculated so that they don't have to do that solo reinterpretation that you're talking about. So some of that also is just a little bit of consistency in us having an understanding of what we want to share, what we want to build out through the school district, and then allowing the directors and the principals to really work to carry that message forward without having to do their own interpretation.
Makes sense. And just to give a specific example, and I mentioned this last year, but it bears worth repeating, Dr. Moran came to my son's school to address parent concerns about a sensitive personnel issue, and it was very powerful to have you there, Dr. Moran, backing up the school administrators and the principal. And there were questions posed by parents that the principal was not in a position to be able to answer, but you were. And that was great because it eliminated the confusion, created open lines of communication. And so I'm hoping that the directors of these respective clusters are empowered to do something similar to what you did during that particular episode, which would be fabulous. Just a couple of plugs. So it's a great cross-sectional team that incorporates many of the elements that these schools are going to need. As you phase this in, I would encourage you to have somebody responsible for the coordination of out-of-school time programming, because that often falls on somebody from the central office who's doing their best to coordinate, all of the after-school programs in middle and high school. But these cluster teams will have a unique perch and be able to see things more holistically and be able to potentially connect some of the out-of-school time providers in a way that's more effective and efficient. And then similarly, our social workers, I'm not sure how or if they're involved in these cross-sectional teams as well, but could be another point of contact that provides support to them, because as we know, their caseloads are overwhelming. And so having more structural support for them at a closer level, I think would also be a good thing as you continue to evolve these cluster teams. But I'm excited about this change. I look forward to getting an update later this year on how it's going. And I know because it's the first year you've implemented it, but I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
Thank you to my colleagues. Really, really good questions. I'll just a couple of follow-ups, and if you all have any other follow-ups, let me know. To kind of where Councilor Albornoz was going there on, acknowledging this is a shift. Student achievement is going to be and I really appreciated, Dr. Moran, you said student achievement, number one reason we're doing this, and that you're also going to be embedded in holding people accountable to the improvement plans at the school level, which obviously makes a ton of sense. There's been concern over many, many years that that those used to just be kind of on the shelf, and you got through the course of the day and they had dust on them, and let's see what we need. We need to do another one. Let's dust off the one from last year and do it again. So the fact that those are living, breathing documents and being used for accountability with the cross-functional teams, I think is a really good thing, because they obviously have buy-in from the staff and community around what they need to see. One of the things I am concerned about to the people part of this is people that were in an area feeling that their expertise is being utilized to the fullest extent to help students and families. How are you addressing any potential staff concerns around that as it relates to retention? What will be the feedback mechanisms? Because you're doing something new, and we hope it works, but you need to, obviously, as we always say, education in particular is a people business, and the people have to have buy-in. They have to feel like they're being rewarded and that their skills are being utilized. So how are we going to measure and assess? You started to talk about it a little bit, but obviously we want the student achievement to improve. That's an indicator for sure. But I think this part of the people side of it is important as well.
Yeah, so our cross-functional teams they meet every Friday morning, and they go through data, have conversations about the support that they're providing, the progress that's being made around that support. We've done a significant amount of team building for our cross-functional teams over the summer. I'm a big believer in team building. Many of our teams went out to the Smith Center and spent a day there together. They've done other types of relationship building activities. So we really spent a lot of intentional time around getting to know people, talking about the cycle of socialization on teams, and really unpacking who people are. Because like you said, without those relationships on a team, number one, you don't always uncover what people's specializations are sometimes without those relationships, right? So sometimes someone goes underutilized because the leader, the director has not been able to establish a relationship to unpack that and then make that useful for a child, a family, a classroom. So that was a big process for the summer. I think similar to, collecting data of schools, we need to collect the data from CFT members as well about how they feel about the changes. And I think we need to do that in a lot of different ways. Surveys are one way. I think, discussions that are, open and focused and created for the interest of continuous improvement. The nice part of this is we all started a race at the same spot. Right. Which I think is extremely advantageous, right? A lot of times in central services, you have people join and come in, and people are well ahead of them in terms of having a institutional knowledge. Well, everybody got started at a baseline, and we built from there. So I think just again, perceptual data collected is essential, but I think that the discussions and unpacking how things are going on a continual basis and making adjustments along the way is going to be needed. There will be. And I've said this to the full team. There's going to be some discomfort, right? There's going to be challenges. There's going to be things that we're going to have to change as we go. And I think one thing that we haven't always been in MCPS is nimble, and felt like we have to just kind of press forward and can't press pause, come together and say, all right, we need to do this a little bit differently. I want to hear from you guys. let's come up with a plan together. So I think the other part is not forcing things on people, but also making them a part of creating the structures, the processes, what a meeting looks like, how they share feedback. And it's nice that we've devoted this time each week for them to come together just as a team. It's been exciting. I encourage you guys, if you get a chance to, and I can help, to follow a cross-functional team into the field.
Yeah.
I mean, they have names for their teams. They have, swag that they've put together for their teams. They're feeling really, really good. It's a great start, but it's also 3 weeks in, and things, when things get hard, we'll find out, how well we're doing.
I appreciate that, Mr. McGuire.
I just would add too that we know we need to build teams across the areas of the district and the central services that aren't on the cross-functional teams as well. And I think to your point, understanding totally that what we knew going into this and what we still know is that we do need to change how we do our work in central office. Just because we're changing the how doesn't mean that we value the why any less, but we know that how we do our work, how we support schools, how we work together in teams in central office, how we're structured, all of that needed to change. And we want to re-envision that with our teams as well. That's going to be an ongoing process. Yeah. Again, that change, we did a lot of change this year, but we know that work of actually seeing the change through and refining it as we go. As Dr. Moran said, the work to really understand, okay, we thought we would do it this way. Is that working? Do we need to do it this way? That's ongoing work. That's an ongoing conversation, and that conversation is not over just because we have boxes in the budget this year. And I just wanted to kind of emphasize that, again, across all the areas of central services, we know that work is continuing, with the primary mission being that everyone's expertise, no matter what chair you might be sitting in, is about student achievement, support for schools, and support for students and families.
No, I appreciate that, and you covered both sides between the two of you, which obviously we want to understand and know how the teams are functioning themselves, but we also want to understand from the folks who are not on the teams at the school level, who may be in a new position or recipients of the support, how they feel about it, and using that both qualitative and quantitative ways to inform how this structure is going. So I think as we get later into the year, I will encourage you to, you've mentioned several things, obviously, but I do think it's important to have a couple of data points like surveys of the people on the teams, of folks at the schools that can be reported on, so that the climate stuff will be important, just so that we have something to look at in addition to the very important, meaningful, probably the most important, meaningful dialogues throughout the year about continuous improvement in and outside of the school building. So I appreciate that. Just one other question, kind of shifting to the other part of the presentation. I was really encouraged to see the slide, and maybe you don't have to put it back up, but that we improved in our diversity of hiring. That's been a challenge, a stubborn challenge everywhere in education. But the fact that we have went above the percentages for Black, African American, and Hispanic educators and school staff is really encouraging. So I just wanted to give you an opportunity to talk a little bit more about what did we do different, why do we think that trend is going in the same direction, and how do we keep it up. As far as engagement, you mentioned kind of anecdotally the engagement with HBCUs and HSIs and other MSIs, but could you talk about other initiatives or what you thought, if there was anything that you did particularly different, or what you think you can do going forward?
So I can speak to our current partnerships with HBCUs and HSIs. We have recruiters and our staffing team that have just pounded the pavement and gone to career fairs and also hosted them at MCPS. And we're going to continue to build upon that. And this year, we want to take a deeper look at our partnerships across the board to see which ones are yielding the biggest impact in terms of producing new teacher hires that really meet our educator workforce and student needs. So that's going to be kind of the next step of our data analysis. I know we didn't bring that to you all today, and something that I'm particularly very interested in. I know the team is interested in taking a deeper look at where are our new teachers coming from and how do we really build upon the partnerships that are yielding the biggest impact for our students.
Yeah, and that's a whole session in and of itself. I'd love to get into that. One of my daughters started middle school and has a new African American male teacher, the first she's ever had. Shout out to Mr. B is his name, and he came from North Carolina. His wife moved, had a job up here, and is an experienced educator, and is in our system. And she's already told me 3 weeks in it's her favorite class. It's a social studies history class, and it just makes a big difference for our kids, particularly right now. If you're a family that saw this horrible ICE activity, and you have if you're a young Latino student and you have a teacher that looks like you, that can share some of your life experience and speak to that, and give you some guide, that just makes a huge difference in the classroom as an example. And so looking at what these pathways have been and how we did it and how we can keep it going, is a super important thing. So I'm really happy to see that we've seen some improvement. And like I said, I just want to add the male component to this. I brought this up, and I'll continue to do it because I think it's important that we are seeing troubling data around our young men and boys, and whether it be student achievement rates or even some of our health outcomes. Our health officer reported that that many of our overdoses, all of our overdoses last year were all men in the county, 100%. We have a really big increase in DUI, particularly in Hispanic Latino men, and so I pushed Dr. Addison when she was here with us earlier in the summer that when we're looking at our data, and I would just say this to all of you, that we need to be disaggregating in all ways, including to see, because our young men and our young girls have different related issues, and some interventions work better for some and not others, and we just need to be constantly pushing ourselves there. And I think that's true in the hiring aspects too. So I don't have any other questions. Do colleagues have questions? No? Okay. Anything else you want to share? Yeah. All right. So we're gonna let you off the hook early today. Ms. Connolly, they're not all this quick, but we're glad to give you a good first one. But thank you for the work, and I know we'll have updates, and I look forward to seeing some of these cross-functional teams and all the folks in the new places in action. And so we'll make sure we get into the schools. I know many of us were in schools the first couple of weeks here, and I will agree with you that we're off to a really good start. Let's just keep it going. So thank you all so much. With that, we are adjourned.